Let's talk about some good news, shall we? We don't really get to cover good news on this channel very much. Things are generally going poorly for trans people and everyone across the country, basically. But we have some good news today out of California. Of course, out of California. There's a lot to be said. There's a lot of conversation around the concept of, like, should teachers tell adults like that the kid came out at school? You know, we talked about it a little bit on the Transatlantic Call-In show this past week, because a lot of states are passing, or maybe not states, but sometimes individual school districts are instating policies that are saying, yeah, if a kid comes out at school, it's mandatory for the teachers to report it to the parents. And I'm sure that a lot of people here can identify some problems with that. Namely, that basically if a kid has not told you as their parent, if they have not told you, the parent, that they're trans or that they're queer, that's probably because they know that you will not react well to it. So then outing the kid to the parents is kind of an insane thing to do. You're probably going to be putting a lot of children at risk. So yeah, like if the kid comes to the teacher and asks, hey, can you help me figure out how to talk to my parents about this? That's a completely different thing than the kid coming to school and saying, school is the only place I feel safe to come out. So good news out of California. Governor Gavin Newsom on Monday signed a bill to protect trans and gay students from being outed to their parents, which makes California the first state to explicitly prohibit school districts from adopting such requirements. The new law will override policies currently existing with school boards in red pockets of the state, which previously required staff to notify parents whose children showed signs of being transgender. So that's, you know, maybe the kid shared nail polish with another kid, or like they took off their jacket when they got to school and they seemed to be kind of gender nonconforming, right? If the teachers even suspected in those cases, then it was required to report, which just seems insane. Like, why are you calling me about my kid, like, wearing nail polish that their friend brought to school? Yeah, and like this can put kids in danger. Maybe, you know, like a liberal leftist parent like me would not care and would be like, why are you wasting my time with this phone call? Whereas there are kids whose parents would be violent toward them. Like maybe that parent would kick them out, or maybe that parent would beat them up. You know, like there are real tangible material risks to children's safety in forcibly outing them. And like maybe it would just be awkward. Maybe they're just not quite ready. You know, there are degrees of harm. There, you know, I'm not saying every time you out a kid it will cause them to die, but it could cause all kinds of issues. And that will disrupt, you know, their ability to do well at school. Yeah, maybe the parents will send them to conversion therapy. Maybe they'll decide to send their kid to boot camp or private religious school. Yeah, many minors are homeless for these type of reasons. Hi, I'm Alexander, and this is Mitternacht. You should hit the like button and subscribe and check out the Patreon. And ooh, look at this hoodie I'm wearing. It's merch. Check it out. Links in the description. Thank you. Senator Susan Talamantes Eggman says safe and supportive schools for all our children should be our top priority. And at the end of the day, that's what this bill does. It ensures our K-12 campuses remain safe and affirming places for our youth, no matter how they identify. Like, yeah, there is like a parents' rights conversation where they're like, I have a right to know things about my child. Like, no, you don't actually. Your child is their own person and they have a right to privacy. We do a terrible job in this country of protecting the rights of children, but like children are not property. They are allowed. In fact, it is considered a form of child abuse if you deny your child privacy. Like if you take the door off of their bedroom and you snoop on their computer all the time, like that is part of a child abuse case. It may be that there need to be other things as well, but that is part of a child abuse case, is declining to provide your child with adequate privacy. And if your kid doesn't trust you enough to tell you what's going on with them, again, that is your failing as a parent. You have not made it clear to them that you will love them no matter what. You have not made it clear to them that you will support them even if they do things that you don't like. Because your children are like, they're just young people. And I know a lot of activists have actually switched and they don't even say children anymore. It's just young people, because fundamentally at the end of the day, they are people who just happen to be young. If parents on the school board hadn't told my parents I was gay, I wouldn't have been kicked out. Yeah. And, you know, it could be other people too, besides the teachers. But this is just regarding what the teachers are allowed to do. Yeah. And it damages the relationship if your parents are snooping on your phone without your permission, especially, and threatening to take your door. If there's a reasonable expectation, and I think that there should be, where it's like, hey, as your parent, I have to make sure that you're safe. So every once in a while, I might ask you to let me look through your phone because I want to make sure that there are no adults being weird. This happened with my younger sister, who my parents are not at all involved enough, like with any of us, really. They're very uninvolved parents, just to put it nicely. And my little sister, who at the time was 15, told me that there was an adult man asking her for nudes. And I was there. I was like, pull out your phone right now and block him immediately. Like right now. So like there is an extent to which parents need to be able to check and see like who are my kids talking to? Is there anything weird or unsafe going on? But I think it's different if you have that expectation in that conversation and you say, hey, we need to discuss reasonable privacy versus me having to protect you and make sure that you're not like doing shit you shouldn't be doing. And like, I'm not going to say that I was the best. Okay. When I was a teenager, I was the sneaking out kind of teenager. Yeah. But also I was like a child of abuse and trauma. And yeah, I did not have knowledge that like, okay, if I do certain things, then I'll have support. Like I did. I snuck out. I was that kind of kid. I was like, in some ways, I was a bad kid because I was not raised with good boundaries. I was not raised in an environment where I knew that my parents would support me. I was seeking support and validation from other people. And that's dangerous too. That's when kids get vulnerable. That's part of the problem with trans kids being rejected from their parents. And we've even covered it on this show before. There was a trans man in like, I want to say North Carolina, who he had been very recently kicked out of living with his mom. He was living with a family friend or maybe an aunt or something. And he went on a date with a cis man who was a few years older. And that man and that man's girlfriend killed that trans man because, again, like an 18-year-old trans man looking for validation, looking for someone to support them, not in a safe environment because the parents revoked their support. Apparently 7 different school boards in the state of California, and California has around 1,000, have passed rules within the last year requiring staff to tell parents if their child begins using a name or pronoun that doesn't match their sex assigned at birth. Courts have blocked or narrowed some of these policies while allowing others to remain in effect. Because, yeah, that's like district by district. Assembly Bill 1955 will prohibit school districts from requiring staff to share information with parents about a student's gender identity or sexual orientation, and will also shield teachers from being disciplined for teaching state-mandated sexual education. So protecting sex education rights as well. You know, you want to make sure that young people get an education about how to protect themselves so that they can have safe sex. Like, you know, kids are going to do things anyway. And by kids in this instance, I mean teenagers. Teenagers are going to do things that maybe we don't want them to do. And we need to make sure that they are capable of doing it safely, you know, whether that's providing them with condoms, whether that's providing them with birth control, as well as having conversations about, you know, making good choices. But you can't just say, no, you're not allowed to do this. The states that teach abstinence-only sex education have the highest rates of teen pregnancies. So yeah, that bill also covers some other good stuff. I will just add, kind of on the end of this, like sort of an amusing side point. Like the primary point is that it's amazing that these protections have passed. You know, that there's at least one state that says children have a right to privacy. We are not going to out children to potentially abusive parents. But Elon Musk, who has a trans daughter, recall, has posted about this law changing, saying that he's planning to move the Twitter headquarters to Texas, and he wants to move the headquarters of SpaceX from California to Texas. This person claims, so we know he has a trans child, and they say that they're told by many close to Elon that the rage over the trans kid motivates a lot more than you realize. Like, apparently Elon Musk is lashing out at trans people because of his kid coming out as trans. Yeah, prohibition tactics always backfire. Although someone did say in chat earlier that there is a decent chance that what Elon Musk actually wants is for his companies to be based in Texas because of their tax policies, and that the trans stuff is kind of just a smoke cover for that actual intention. But I know that SpaceX, I don't know, he's not like, I thought that he wasn't allowed to make like executive decisions with SpaceX because of him smoking weed on Joe Rogan's podcast or something along those lines. But anyway, mostly I wanted to cover the good news. You know, obviously Elon Musk being pissy about this and going, oh, parents have the right to blah, blah, blah. Like, no, like as a parent, the only thing you have a right to, I mean, I don't even think you have a right to whatever in regards to parenthood. And I've seen parents in my community agree with me on this. Some people will say, oh, because you adopted much later in life, you don't actually know how it works. But even people who have given birth to their own kids will say that they have obligations to their children, but they don't have like rights to their children. You know, your kid has a right to education and you don't have the right to deny them that. Educational neglect is a form of neglect. You can get your kids taken away for doing that. And you have obligations to protect your children from physical harm. You don't have the right to hit your children in most places. You don't have the right to prevent them from accessing medical care. That's abuse. So, yeah, I view parenthood as a deep responsibility with a lot of obligations, but you don't have the right to control your child. You don't have the right to harm your child. You don't have the right to deny them privacy and access to essential services and care. Yeah. As a parent, you owe your kid, not the other way around. Your kid doesn't owe you. They didn't ask you to have them. So I don't know that I have a lot else to add to this. You know, obviously I stand in opposition to child abuse. I think everybody does. But the tricky thing is that the way that conservatives define child abuse is very different from how most normal people define child abuse. Provide your kid with a safe, healthy, constructive environment. And it shouldn't be more complicated than that. I just feel like it shouldn't be more complicated than that. If you're not providing that to your kid, then they have every right to go to a teacher who will help make them feel accepted and safe. Sometimes all it takes to dramatically reduce a trans kid's suicidal ideation is one supportive person in their lives. One. And if that's their art teacher or their English teacher or something, then like, God willing, that kid makes it to adulthood. Last month was Pride, now it's time for Wrath. Thank you so much to my patrons, including Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvog, Jack, Amanda B., Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Danielle McDonald, DZXN, Spooky Heather Sylvia, Pasnell Infinity, Suzanne Maynard, Sojo, Jamie Jam, Dizzy Quiche, Jericho, Kevin Young, Liam Hodgson, Athiette, Elavie Nobody, Mr. Atheist, Elizabeth Bartell, Celeste, Nova, and Michelle Frattaroli.